Thank you, everyone. I appreciate being here today. Just wanted to give a brief discussion on the Grants Program Management Division and what we're doing. So the immediate background is that as funding comes in, there are certain strings if you're on the federal side, the federal funding side. And our responsibility in conjunction with the US DOT is to administer those funds and make sure the federal requirements are met. There's also state grants and state requirements as well. But working in conjunction with MDOT, greatly at SHA and Federal Highway Administration and US DOT are trying to coordinate and make sure all that funding is being spent in accordance with the rules. And so that is a major effort that we have undertaken. And we have been delegated certain responsibilities, and others are still lie with the federal government. So depending on the situation, we are constantly coordinating to get to the solutions, to get the projects out the door, and to make sure they're successful. As a part of that, we endeavored this past summer to create the Grants and Program Management Division. With the increased grant opportunities that have come, we made the strategic decision at SHA that we need to have a dedicated division that coordinates all these activities. And so that has been a major undertaking. We are off and running, and it is something that we are very proud of and we think is going to be very, very successful. We still have a lot to learn about how this new division will operate at its maximum capacity, but we are looking for feedback, looking for ways of doing things better, and we will be continuing to grow the program over the next few years. Having said that, this training is a stepping stone in that direction. The idea is to provide agencies with the information they need to be successful going forward. I am going to stop there and hand it over to Imad Gibi, our Deputy Director, who will discuss some of the federal grant programs more specifically. So, Imad?
Well, good morning, everybody. As said, my name is Imad Gibi. I'm Deputy Director of Planning and Program Development, overseeing the Planning Division, the newly established GPMD Division, and also the Capital Program Development. So, what you see on the slide is basically the federal grant programs that can support your project. So we have categorized them, and there are 6 categories that's shown here: the transportation alternatives, reg trail, safe route to schools, carbon reduction, earmarks, national scenic byways. Some of them are very well self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go into the detail of those, but there are 3 that I want to touch base. The TA program, the transportation alternative ones. This is one of the more generous funding types that could address or support a wide range of projects. It could be anything from the bike ped projects, safety projects, all the way to mitigation, highway runoffs, or historic transportation buildings. So this is a funding source that can support a wide range of projects. The other one that I want to touch base is the safe route to school. If you have a project that in some shape or form addresses the safety concerns within the 2-mile zones of a school, the safe route to school could be a good supporting program for that project. And the good point is that it could cover any of the projects, a wide range of schools from the kindergarten all the way to the 12th grade. I want to also touch base on the CRP program. This is for the projects that could help reduce the carbon emissions. It could be a sidewalk project. It could be a trail project. So these, it's also a valuable tool in our toolbox that we can use to support your projects if they fall within this category. Like I said, the others are kind of self-explanatory. I'm not going to take your time, and I will try to be brief because there are a lot of valuable information that the presenters are going to provide today. But what I want to emphasize is the roles of the GPMD. Let me kind of touch base on, we created a new division of the Grant Program Management Division. But when this division was created, of course, with the support of the SHA senior leadership team, the idea and the focus were mainly 3 things as they relates to this workshop, right? One of them was to have a division that kind of manages the program at a program level, not at a project level, all the bike ped projects, the safety projects. And that itself indicates the focus of the administration, right? This is the focus, this is where we're going, so we're gonna establish a new team. The other two that are kind of goes hand to hand and tied together is we wanted to have a division to enhance and improve the relationship we have with the locals. It's already a great establishment, but we wanted to expand on that. We want to do a better relationship, to have a better relationship with our local partners, and to create a situation and a scenario that we can take advantage of the external funding opportunities that are before us, right? The earmark projects, the grant opportunities. We wanted to have that division and capable a group of the team that could handle those opportunities and leverage those federal dollars to build the roads across the Maryland. So we want to serve as a liaison between the locals and also the district, the delivery offices across the state, SHA. Whether it is the district office, it is design office, it's construction, it's OMT. We want to serve at that capacity. So this is our role. The division chief for GPMD is Cheryl Ladota. So you can contact her with any question that you might have. You can also reach out to me directly. But in order to tackle these challenges, we can't do it on our own. So we need your help. And this is why we are having this workshop, right? We want to talk about the responsibility of the sponsor responsibility. It's a two-way road, right? We need to work together to go through all these steps to make sure we have a successful delivery. Now, I'm not going to read through all of these things because the team today are going to actually talk about some of these steps to try to clarify some confusions. We're going to talk about the NEPA, right-of-way, construction, material procurement. But what I do want to talk about is this milestone requirement. This is critical because it is imperative for us to be able to stick to the program and the project schedules, because depending on the type of the projects and the funding source, if we are not where we should be for some certain projects, we may lose the grant or the funding opportunities, and it's very critical. So, in some cases, for example, if we submit the comments for design or construction, we are expecting a timeliness response back and forth. And again, we have to do the same thing at SHA. And it's a two-way road. So we are looking for collaboration. We want to make sure, this is the purpose of this workshop. We want to make sure that the line of communication is open. We want to tell you, introduce the team here and let you connect with us and let us know what you need so that we can help further. There are some cases that, for example, you may get an award for construction, but there is a prior award that was allocated for design. You can only benefit from your construction funding if you finish your design projects on time. So if you miss the deadlines and the milestone requirements, you're going to lose the funding for construction. We had an earlier workshop today, last month, on design. So some of the contents here, for some of you that may have been in the previous workshop, some are also the same. But the reason we are including them here is because not all, this is specifically for construction, but not all of the projects are ready to go for construction. You can apply for a construction award and be awarded, but the design could be as low as 30%. So there's a whole bunch of design that still needs to be done before the project is ready for construction. And this kind of highlights the significance of the milestone requirements. So this is why we are here. We want to basically provide the information, try to make sure everybody's on board with our process. And please reach out if you have any question. The team that we have at GPMD, they are the right people with the right mindset. They are very passionate about what they do, very knowledgeable. But of course, if we do not have answer, we can always follow back. And so without further ado, I want to hand it back to Susie to talk about the project steps that needs to happen, and then we can get started on going into the details and into the need beats.
After the kickoff meeting, we have the agreements, we have NEPA, we have right-of-way. You'll be hearing more about that today. In your kickoff meeting, you'll hear about the MOU that needs to be completed. From then, you turn to procurement. Procurement happens with the IFB going out for advertisement onto eMaryland Marketplace. After we get the procurement out, then we move to awarding the design contract. And after we award the construction contract. After the construction is complete, then we roll into the reimbursement, and closeout process. So this is the process that we are going to be discussing today. We are going to start out with NEPA. We have Erica Amdusky and Carrie Springler that will discuss the NEPA process.
Thank you, Susie. So as Susie introduced me, I am Erica Domsky with SHA. I am the Consultant Environmental Manager for all of these projects. So some of the NEPA roles and responsibilities. First off, these have to be followed because projects that are funded with federal resources are required to abide by the National Environmental Policy Act of 1969. Therefore, you're following the federal regulations. And so your lead federal agencies will always be either Federal Highway Administration or the Federal Transit Administration. Next, you have your lead state agency, which is us, the State Highway Administration, who's ultimately responsible for the compliance with state regulations. We have delegated regulatory authority from Federal Highway, MDE, and MHT. And then next up is project sponsor. You guys, you're ultimately responsible for the development of the project-related documents and records, and you have to hold and abide by the environmental commitments. The regulatory agencies that will be involved in your projects include the Maryland Historical Trust, otherwise known as MHT, Maryland Department of the Environment, MDE, Maryland Department of Natural Resources, also known as DNR, and the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, USFWS. They provide the regulatory guidance, and they are the ones that are going to review your projects no matter the scope. Next, please. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So the SHA environmental manager, which is myself, I will reach out after the execution of the MOU. We'll discuss the project and determine the level of agency coordination required and the level of NEPA documentation required, because that can change depending on the scope of work, agency reviews, whether there's significant impacts to, for instance, like historical resources or sensitive environmental resources. But at this stage, please be prepared to provide a very detailed scope of work, the limits of disturbance, which will include all of your staging, access, mitigation, stormwater management, anything that's going to be touched by the project. That should be one polygon that includes everything for that project. And you provide that in a GIS shapefile because the agencies can only use GIS shapefiles to review the projects. And finally, you will include a location map, displays, plans, anything to help give a better detail about the project. Next, please. All right, so now we're getting into agency coordination. Now, the SHA-EM Environmental Manager can assist with submitting your cultural resources or MHT coordination, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife determination keys, and the initial DNR submission, which will be for the Wildlife and Heritage Service and the Environmental Review Program. This is where it gets a little tricky because it's really important to pay attention to this following list, where the sponsor is responsible for all of the critical area coordination, DNR rural legacy coordination, scenic and wild rivers, tidal coordination, especially the National Marine Fisheries Service and Coast Guard, any extended natural resource inventories or resource delineations, any of your water and tree permits, whether it's JPA, roadside tree, forest conservation plan. You guys will also be in charge of developing the Section 4F documentation if it's required or impacted for your project. I will help facilitate that to Federal Highway. As it says here, the SHA-EM will submit to Federal Highway, but you guys are in charge of getting the initial steps developed and getting your documentation signed by the official jurisdiction. Next, please.
All right, thanks, Erica. Hi, I'm Carrie
Thank you.
Springler. I am the Cultural Resources Local Programs Lead here at SHA. And so federally funded projects are required to follow Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, which requires federal agencies to take into account the effect that a project receiving federal funds or permits or that require federal approval may have on any historic site, building, structure, object, historic district that's included in or eligible for inclusion in the National Register of Historic Places, or NRHP. The NRHP is an official list of properties that are significant in American history, architecture, engineering, archaeology, and culture, and are considered worthy of preservation. So in 2021, FHWA, SHA, and the Maryland Historical Trust signed an amended programmatic agreement which gives SHA the authority to conduct Section 106 consultation on behalf of FHWA for local public agency projects where federal funds are being administered by SHA. And we follow the same process for state-funded projects. This standardized the Section 106 process and means SHA does the work of conducting Section 106 consultation for local public agencies, which replaced the prior standard of local jurisdictions consulting separately with MHT. Next slide, please. So SHA has archaeologists and architectural historians on staff, and we're responsible for conducting the Section 106 consultation, which means that we assess whether a project can be exempted from full Section 106 review. For example, certain trails projects don't always need formal consultation with MHT, but something like a bridge replacement never fits the exemption criteria and always requires standard Section 106 consultation. So here at SHA, we do the research to see whether archaeological sites or standing structures over 50 years old may be in your project area. We determine whether archaeological or standing structure surveys need to be conducted for your project. We do all the coordination and consultation with the Maryland Historical Trust, and we identify consulting parties and consult with them as well. We give recommendations on how to avoid or minimize impacts to historic properties if there are any in the project area. We assist grant recipients in developing mitigation and agreement documents in the rare instances where those are required. And we give guidance on steps to follow if human burials or archaeological sites are encountered during construction. So to successfully conduct Section 106 consultation, as Erica kind of alluded to before, we also need grant recipients to provide location maps, detailed scopes of work, plans if available, or schematics and limits of disturbance. We need you to notify us of project scope changes, and we need the deliverables for projects requiring survey as we ensure quality control of the products and submit everything to MHT for consultation. And so that's my brief Section 106 primer. Thanks for your time.
Good morning. I'm Lee Fox. I'm the LPA right-of-way coordinator out of the Office of Real Estate. Today, I'm going to highlight the right-of-way certification process as explained in our LPA right-of-way intro and guidance packet, which is all based off of federal highway and SHA directives. When does the LPA right-of-way coordinator actively participate in facilitating the right-of-way certification? The follow-up process starts once the right-of-way coordinator is informed the NEPA is complete for only projects requiring acquisitions. The LPA right-of-way coordinator is informed NEPA is complete by either or both the sponsor and/or the SHA grants and programs team, depending on the project details and if there are acquisitions. Requesting a Teams meeting is recommended for questions about either the LPA right-of-way intro and guidance packet, other resources about right-of-way, or if the project has right-of-way complications, once right-of-way is, of course, confirmed by NEPA. Now, I will periodically send emails asking for status of where your right-of-way is in the process or what you might be waiting for with right-of-way. And we provide oversight by tracking your right-of-way activity, which enables us to be more available if you have any right-of-way complications. Examples of right-of-way complications. Fee simple when there are donations or dedications, easements for conservation or from railroads, permits for using government or utilities land, entry agreements when donated, and relocations. Of course, there's other complications there. They're somewhat unlimited, and you'll know when you run into one. Now, NEPA is required before contacting the affected property owners about negotiations or offers. Avoid discussing any details about the acquisition until NEPA is complete. Now, of course, this doesn't preclude you talking in general at like public involvement about, your property may be involved. It's just the details that you want to stay away from until your NEPA is done. And we suggest holding off on any preliminary right-of-way activities that involve contacting the property owners until your NEPA confirms the project, the right-of-way, because it's best not to spend money until your right-of-way is confirmed. The right-of-way certification request and review. The submission is required to include the appropriate documents on the checklist included in the LPA right-of-way intro and guidance packet, which was recently updated in August. A template example for the right-of-way certification request letter is included in the packet. Right-of-way certification review may take up to 45 days, but normally is a lot shorter depending on the project details. Projects with multiple acquisitions will receive a right-of-way tracker that will assist us with compliance and the review process. Right-of-way certification follow-up requests throughout the process assist us in expediting the review process. Now, project sponsors are required to identify if the project is involuntary or voluntary and follow the appropriate requirements regarding notification to the affected property owners. A Uniform Act notification letter template example for a voluntary project is included in the packet. Most projects are voluntary, and when the sponsor, and this means the sponsor does not have authorization for eminent domain or decides not to use combination for the project, as compared with involuntary project, which removes the voluntary language on the uniform notification letter, therefore allowing for eminent domain. I want to emphasize that the LPA right-of-way intro and guidance package includes a description of the required documents, such as a certified record of negotiations, which is a log of important communications with the property owners, including initial contact, offers, negotiations, and details such as about waivers, settlements, and other right-of-way complications. All acquisitions are required to have some type of agreement, usually recorded, depending on advice from your legal department or your consultants. Minimum requirements for when all right-of-way is owned by the sponsor. NEPA, always need your NEPA and any reevaluations. And if you do need a reevaluation, we need you to go ahead and cease any active right-of-way activities until the NEPA is fully done again, the reevaluation is done. Right-of-way plats, plans, and maps, right-of-way verified, highlighted along the limit of disturbance. Historical proceeding agreements, memo of understanding, application or award letter, and then the letter from the township, county, or sponsor requesting right-of-way certification. This letter states that the project is within the right-of-way of the township, county, or sponsor, and indicates the maintenance of the project will be the responsibility of the township, county, and sponsor. And in turn, if you do have acquisitions, the letter would, of course, include what you did acquire. Right-of-way certification is always required before advertising for bids, regardless if all work will be done on the sponsor's existing right-of-way without any right-of-way acquired. All requirements apply to all right-of-way acquired with local and/or federal funding. So if you're acquiring, you need to go ahead and make sure we see all the appropriate information, no matter what the acquisition is. My supervisor and I complete right-of-way certifications for many types of SHA LPA projects, not just the 6 categories that the Grants and Programs Division handles. And so therefore, it's important to allow up to the 45 days to receive right-of-way certification, especially at the end of the year. If there are any right-of-way complications, we strongly suggest to reach out for a meeting as soon as your NEPA confirms your right-of-way, and sometimes even sooner. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Shirley Blake. I'm the EEO officer for District 4, which is Baltimore and Hartford counties. And I'd like to take a moment and introduce Patricia Frederick. She's with us. She's from District 3, Montgomery and PG counties. And I'd like to talk to you about the Office of Equal Opportunity and the district officers' equal opportunity portion of the contract in which we're involved in. We're referred to as the DEEO, which is District EEO Officers. We monitor the contracts from beginning to the end of the contract closeout. We attend the pre-construction meeting. We process commercially useful functions, and particularly that process is only done on state-funded contracts at this time. We investigate certified payroll issues, should there be issues with the payrolls. We assist with prompt payment issues between the prime and the subcontractors. We also assist in preparation for federal highway audits should the contract be selected for a federal highway audit. And we monitor the contract from beginning to closeout. Currently, the DBE program is on hold. Right now, all DBEs previously have been decertified. They have to go through a recertification process. That whole program is being revamped at this time. We're waiting for additional information to be provided by the legal staff here at MDOT headquarters. And the MBE program is still intact. We do still monitor state-funded contracts for goal achievement. We also do the commercially useful function reviews to ensure that the companies are legitimate and they're in charge of their portion of the contract and they're doing what they're supposed to do in order to meet the goals of the contract. We have 7 districts and Hanover. All of our district officers. District 1 is Sean O'Donnell. District 2 is Tina Scott, both of which are on Eastern Shore. We have Patricia Frederick, she's District 3. I'm in District 4. District 5 is Stefania Motti. District 6 is Christy Logsden in Western Maryland. Jackie McKendy is District 7. And we have Carrie Edwards at Hanover. I also want to mention if anyone has any questions about the DBE program, you can contact the Department of Social and Economic Mobility. Their phone number is 410-865-1269, and their email address is mbe@mdot.maryland.gov, and they can assist anyone who's trying to recertify as a DBE firm in the state of Maryland. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As Susie said, my name is Molly Porter. I'm in the new Grants and Programs Management Division as the Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Program Team Lead. So the MDOT Complete Streets policy is a policy that became effective on June 1st, 2024, and reaffirms the MDOT's commitment to complete streets, which is really a planning and design and construction tool that considers all users on the roadways, whether or not you're in a car, on a bike, or walking. So how does this policy apply to local projects? If a local project is within SHA right-of-way or MDOT right-of-way, then the project will be required to comply with the Complete Streets policy. What this means in practice is that the project sponsor will be required to write an MDOT Complete Streets objective statement. So this statement identifies the problem that the project is trying to solve, whether it be safety, connectivity, why you're doing the project in the first place, and then what measurable goals will get you to the solution for that problem. Your SHA program liaison that will work with you on your individual project will have guidance for you and a template about how to create this objective statement. These objective statements are really meant to guide the overall goal of the project to increase safety, increase connectivity for all users within the roadway. And again, this only applies if your project is within MDOT right-of-way. You will be required to comply with the Complete Streets policy. So your SHA program liaison will be reaching out to you if your project is within SHA right-of-way, and you can start the process to draft the objective statement itself.
Hello, as Susie said, I'm Sean McEvely. I'm with Rossi Group, and we're just going to talk about the milestone requirements during the design process to get up to advertisement. So these projects, they follow the standard SHA 30, 60, 90 PS&E submission milestone schedule. At each milestone, the sub-recipient or the LPA will submit the design documents to the GPMD staff. GPMD staff will then do a preliminary review, distribute to the affected sections for a full review. With this being a thorough review, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to turn around comments. Those comments will then be assembled into one comprehensive document, returned to the subrecipient for the design changes for the next submittal. So with the next submittal, the subrecipient's engineer will prepare a list of comment responses. They should be specific and easy to understand to enable a thorough follow-up review with point-by-point responses to the comments, highlighted plan changes, and include additional information with subsequent reviews. So as the reviews go on, they get more and more detailed with the information needed. So the 30% review, 30% submission will include the design plans and the cost estimate at a preliminary level. Following the comments and the resubmission, the 60% is the next milestone. Again, that's where you get your comment response letter, highly detailed, updated design plans and cost estimate, any ADA waivers if applicable, and then any other items, reports, scour analysis, those kind of items. 90% is almost final, obviously, or it is final. Point-by-point responses to the comments, updated design plans and cost estimates, ADA waivers if applicable, which should be mostly worked through close to approval. At this point, we'll see the draft IFB for review. It's important to get that in as early as possible because it's a large document and does take a lot of review and possible revisions. And then any additional items again. So for 100% PS&E, again, the point-by-point response letter, hopefully everything is close to being wrapped up at this point. Updated design plans and cost estimate, ADA waivers if applicable. The final IFB at this point should be pretty much wrapped up, if not completely wrapped up, and then any additional items. Oops, sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit. So the individual reviews themselves will be completed by the subject matters within SHA. Examples, Office of Highway Development does the ADA review, bicycle compliance, and plats and surveys, highways and hydraulics, Office of Materials Technology, Pavement and Geotech Division, Engineering Geology, Office of Traffic Safety, Office of Structures, if there are structures included, any large drainage items or structures are included in that review, bridges, walkways, and then Office Environmental Design for any landscape items, District Constructability, and the Federal Aid Programming Division. So the PS&E checklist at the end will be submitted. It's a thorough checklist, includes a lot of items. It's all your certifications for right-of-way, NEPA, any permits, utility statements, utility coordination certificate. If you're abutting or affecting a railroad, you'll need the railroad statement, traffic control certification, ADA compliance certification, and again, any ADA waivers if those are required. Erosion and sediment control, liquidated damages, the full IFB at this point, which should be final, and that's also going to include a lot of these statements and certifications within the ISB. PS&E cost estimate and checklist needs to be signed, and then the executed MOU between SHA and the local agency.
All right, thank you. So to start off, we know what the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 is. It is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in many areas of public life, including jobs, schools, and transportation. The purpose of the law is to make sure that people with disabilities have the same rights and opportunities as everyone else. And the law ensures that people with disabilities are not excluded from participation in or denied the benefits of services, programs, and activities. And it sets standards for accessibility in new construction and alterations. So pretty much all new construction or altered work must be upgraded to ADA compliance. Next slide, please. SHA's responsibility. We're committed to upholding the intent and spirit of the ADA to the fullest extent possible, and fully committed to the goal of achieving equal opportunity and non-discrimination for all persons in their interactions with SHA and along SHA roadways. Next slide, please. So due to that, all LPA projects require review for ADA compliance and bicycle compatibility at each design milestone. As discussed previously, the preliminary investigation, semi-final review, final review, and PS&E. All projects will be reviewed using the SHA accessibility policy and guidelines for pedestrian facilities along state highways, and SHA bicycle policy and design guidelines, with few exceptions. Per the recreational trail program manual, recreational trail projects involving a paved shared use path must comply with the ADA. However, a woodland or motorized trail or trail facility must be constructed as accessible according to the applicable standards as outlined in the U.S. Forest Service Trail Accessibility Guidelines. Next slide, please. Thank you. If any feature within the project limits does not meet ADA or bicycle requirements, and it is infeasible to make the required updates, a waiver will need to be submitted by the LPA. They'll be submitted to the grants program division, and they'll send it to us for review and approval by the Director of Office of Highway Development. A meeting should be held with the sponsor, Grants and Program Management Division, and our ADA and Bike Review team to discuss the reasons for the waiver prior to submittal. Oftentimes, we might be able to find a way to get the work done without a waiver being necessary, and we can also discuss the outline and of the waiver itself. It's kind of a detailed document that has a lot of specific formatting that needs to be followed. So we can discuss that during the meeting as well. Once the waiver is submitted, there will be a review process prior to approval. Changes may need to be made to the document before it can be submitted to the director for approval. Next one. For projects that are in construction, all projects that are to be built to ADA compliance will require an ADA field verification to determine if the project is compliant with SHA's accessibility policy. Either the SHA construction inspector or someone from the grants program division will notify us that the project is complete and ready for verification. We'll send a team out to collect the data, the work that was completed. A report will be generated that shows all non-compliant features that need to be reconstructed. And once the project is found to be fully compliant with SHA accessibility policy, a memo will be provided, which is required for the closeout procedures. I think that's everything on my end. If you have any questions, please enter them into the chat or at the QR code provided earlier, and do my best to get answers to you.
All right, I'm Dana Morse. I'm from SHA's Office of Structures. So Office of Structures, we're designated authority for reviewing structure plans for projects receiving federal funding. So structures could include bridges or small structures. And if they meet certain criteria, then they have to go through structure milestone reviews during plan development. And that does include structures that are not owned and inventoried by SHA. So I actually brought along, and this is probably, I'll get into this in the next slide. So what's a bridge? A bridge is any structure, which could be like a typical bridge that you're accustomed to seeing, or like a box culvert, or a battery of pipes that has a length greater than 20 feet measured along the center line of the roadway. So over 20 feet, sort of the key there. But we also look at small structures. Can we go to 2 slides ahead?
You have it. Do you want me to do it for you?
No, yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So next is, what's a small structure? So these are also of interest to us in our reviews. So small structures could include small bridges, so less than 20 feet, box culverts or pipes, or retaining walls. So I brought along 2 documents. They're guidelines and procedures memoranda. One of them, it goes into what we look at for our inventoried structures, for Office of Structures. And they sort of give qualifications for what would receive these milestone reviews. And the second document, it details expectations and requirements for the structure's milestone reviews. I guess I'll get into that later. So during our review, Office of Structures will determine what qualifies as a small structure. But in order to do that, we're going to need applicants to provide some information. So for pipes, we need to know the depth of fill, the pipe opening, and clear distance between pipes, if there are multiple pipes in a structure. For non-pipes, so small bridges, box culverts, we need to know total length along the center line of the roadway, and the clear span length, sort of perpendicular to the structure axis. And retaining walls, we need to know the exposed height and offset distance from the traveled lane or facility being supported. So if you have structures that don't qualify based upon our criteria, then the review we receive from Office of Structures would be sort of less stringent. So what's the purpose of the review? So our concerns are sort of about structural appropriateness, constructability of all the structures within your project. It could relate to long-term performance of the structure, future maintenance requirements. Also, I think probably most importantly, structures need to be safe. So they need to have a design in accordance with AASHTO LRFD specifications, railings compliant with MASH. Let's see. So our structure milestones. I know sorry, I keep forgetting to do this. The structure milestones. It may seem onerous, but the thing is, I think that it can kind of be contiguous with the project milestones that Sean talked about. So they sort of follow that 30, 60, 90 format. So we start off with type, size, and location, or TS&L. And then we have a foundation review and then a structure review. We have plan development checklists at each of those milestones that outline all the information, the expectations. So we can certainly provide those upon request. All right, so TS&L. Expectations, so that's around 30% plan development. So expectations would include structural analysis. So you should know that the superstructure has been evaluated for structural adequacy. H&H, basically just say refer to the OOS manual for hydrologic and hydraulic design. That's on the SHA website. Plan development, so we kind of give a list here of plan sheets we would expect for a typical TS&L submittal for a structure. All right, foundation review. So this is around 60% plan development. So we'd expect comment responses from the previous submittal. We'll need foundation borings and a geotech report, a foundation report, scour evaluation for structures over water, and then plan development as outlined in our checklists. And for structure review, that's getting pretty close to the end, around 90%. So again, we'd expect comment responses and plan development outlined. in our checklists. And then there's also the structural details. So those are, we used to call them standards, and they, standardized details that are used on lots and lots of projects that show like maybe rebar bands or, just sort of standard details for any project. And that was it for my presentation. Thanks.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Habtol Dihegis. I'm from State Highway Administration, Office of Material Technology, Material Management Division. I am the newly Assistant Division Chief for the Material Section. I used to be Area Material Engineer. So today I will try to present the material clearance process, what we need to do, and a little bit of the Build America, Buy America requirement. So why we do the quality assurance requirement for the county project? What is the reason? Is there anyone who can tell me why we do quality assurance, why you are required to do?
Federal Highway says we have to.
Yes, so thank you very much. So based on the Code of Federal Regulation 637, all state infrastructure projects receiving federal money has to comply the quality assurance requirement established by the Federal Highway Administration. So State Highway Administration ensures that the local public agency project receiving federal money has to comply with the federal regulation and state regulations. So based on the Title 23 Code of Federal Regulation 637, there are 6 core elements of quality assurance program. The first one is the contractor quality control, the one we call it QC. So contractor has to have a quality control plan. The second one is a quality assurance acceptance, which our section does, all the material clearance process, the source, so the quality assurance acceptance. The third is the independent assurance. We have in our division, in Materials Management Division, we have an independent assurance team. So the county or the construction owner, during construction, you are required to contact this team. So they will come out to the field, they will check all the sampling, the testing procedure the technicians does in the field, follow the specification. So make sure, because this is one of the items that the federal government, the Federal Highway Administration is looking. So make sure to contact this team, and then they will do the audit. So they check the technicians' certifications, they check all the sampling procedures, they check all the field equipment, testing equipments are calibrated. So we have also the dispute resolution mechanism. So whenever disputes arises due to material clearance related, we have a mechanism. And the fifth one is a laboratory accreditation qualification. So you have 2 options. You can use the State Highway Laboratory for your testing for concrete, asphalt, soil. We prefer that you use State Highway Lab, but you can use a third-party lab. But that third-party lab has to be AASHTO accredited. And the certification has to be submitted to the construction office. And the last one is personal qualification certification. All technicians, inspectors working in your project, the working, sampling, testing, they have to be MARCEP certified. We have the Mid-Atlantic Technician, the Mid-Atlantic Region Technician Certification Program. We have a team in our division who does that. So all technician has to be MARCEP certified. So I have to, okay. And so once the project is awarded to the contractor, the county or the project owner has to submit a request to the Office of Material Technology Director for material testing and inspections cost estimate. So the package includes, make sure to send the letter, the advertised plan, the specification, and the bid items. Once this is submitted to our office, the director will forward the package to the assigned area material engineers. We have 4 material engineers in our office, so they will prepare the cost estimate for how much cost it takes for testing, material clearance process, everything for OMT does. So once this is completed, the cost sharing agreement will be prepared between the county and OMT. So once this is done, we also require the local public agencies, the county, need to send us the list of the bid items to our office so we can set up the project in our system. We have a system called Materials Management System. We call it MMS in short, Materials Management System. So you send us all the list of the bid items, we set up the project in our system, and then the material clearance process starts. So in the material clearance process or the quality assurance process, there are 3 tasks, main tasks. One, the source of supply. The second one is the material clearance process, and the final is the final material clearance process. We call it the 30-day notice. So we have a qualified product and producers list. So State Highway Administration has a list. You cannot bring a material in Home Depot or Lowe's. We don't accept. We have the list of qualified product and producer list to use in a state project. Please make sure when you submit sources for your project, use this list. The list is found in our website. So some people, they assume that once they select a producer from this list, they think that everything is done. No. The QPL is used for source of supply. It doesn't replace the quality assurance testing. So as I said before, there are 3 key steps. So the first step is the source of supply. So based on the Maryland Standard Specification, Section 900-01, you are required to submit the source of the material, the proper source of material, to our system, to the materials management system for our review and approval. You are not allowed to use any material in the project without having a source approved. So please make sure to submit the source and get approval. This is a very critical step in the material clearance process. So if you use a material without an approved source, we will dispute it. So please make sure that. So we have the source is submitted in the MMS, which is Materials Management System. We'll review it. Once after we review it, if everything is okay, then the prime contractor will receive a notification, and then make sure that please review the approved source page. It is found in the MMS under the document tab. There is a quality assurance section. Please review, reference, read that. Because for each material, it tells you what you need to do. If, for example, if there is a bridge metal, that item needs inspection before shipment. So some people, they don't read the quality assurance requirement, and then they use a material. Then later when we review, there is no inspection, there is no OMT stamp, and then the whole problem will be created. Maybe someone here, if you know, we had one project in Anne Arundel County. It was delayed by more than 1 year because they missed that step. Please make sure to read the quality assurance requirement. So, and the other item is temporary and permanent material. Some people, they think that temporary material does not need to submit source. No, you have to submit all material, whether it's temporary or permanent. So the second step in the material clearance process is material clearance, or the monthly material clearance estimate. We call it monthly material clearance estimate in a state because contractors submit the estimate or payment request on monthly basis. But for the county project, most of the time, it may be quarterly. They call it invoices. So this is a step that SHA ensures federal requirements are being followed. So typically, the material clearance process is performed based on the progress payment schedule. So the step is a prime contractor, okay, he does a job for 3 months, and then he prepare everything and submit invoices to get paid. When he does that, when the contractor does that, he needs to prepare all the material clearance documentation based on the approved source page in the quality assurance section. We stated what type of requirement we need. For example, some material may require direct inspection, like I said before, bridge metal, aluminum signs, they're very critical items. Our metals team, they go and they inspect at the fabrication before the material is shipped to the project site. So some material may require testing, for example, concrete, asphalt, soil. Some material may require certification with test data, certification without test data. So make sure to refer all these quality assurance acceptance requirements are listed in the approved source page. Please make sure to refer that. So when the contractor submits all the material clearance process, whatever item he used in that month, when he submits to the project engineer, to the county project engineer, we strongly advise the engineer to sit down before some engineers, they receive documentation from the contractor, they dump to us without reviewing. Please make sure, sit down, okay, for this material, what is the quality assurance requirement? Does this say testing? Does this say Form 14? Make sure and then review. If there is something missing, send back to the contractor. This saves our time, your time, contractor's time. There is no issue. So that's what our recommendation is. Okay, next is the final one is once everything is completed. So this is a letter that you require to have. Federal government, Federal Highway Administration requires from you. So once everything is finished, means all the construction work is finished, everything is paid, then the engineer from the county is responsible to submit, we call it a 30-day notice to our office, to the area material engineer. Why we call it 30 days? Because I'm going to close out the project within 30 business days. That's why 30-day notice means. So 30-day notice package includes, one, you need to complete this form. This is available in our website under Office of Construction. This is Office of Construction form, OOC 26. And we need also the summary of all paid items. And if there are unused items also, we need that list too. And the total, if you have any asphalt in your project, we need the total tonnage of the asphalt you use or you placed in your project, the total concrete quantities. So these are some of the factors that can delay, your final clearance letter. So once we receive everything, we review it, and if there is no issue, we issue the final clearance letter. But if there is issue, there is a letter, we call it 15-day notice. We will give you the list, what is missing, what we need. We send out the 15-day notice. What does that mean is you need to respond to us within 15-day notice, within 15-day business days. So we issued that. If there is no answer within 15 business days, we issue another letter. We call it 5-day notice. Again, if there is no answer, then we will send a letter by stating that no response. That's not good. That may have a precaution. I mean, the federal government may, withdraw all the money, all the funding that they gave you. So that doesn't happen. I didn't say anything happened like that, but I'm just explaining the process. So this is the process. So remember 3 things. 1, source of supply. 2, material clearance. 3, final material clearance. These are the process that we follow for quality assurance. So now, actually, this was not my part of presentation, but because of the Federal Highway representative cannot make it today, so I'm gonna try to explain what. So now they call it domestic materials procurement preference. That it has two parts. One is the Buy American Act, which is the old one, which requires iron, steel, and manufactured products has to be fabricated or produced in America. So the domestic materials procurement preference has two parts, the Buy American Act and also the Build America, Buy America. So this one, the Build America, Buy America is for construction material. It was added later in May 14, 2022. So the new term that the Federal Highway Administration would like to use is a new one. We call it before Buy America, Build America. So this includes these two portions. So everything, manufactured products and iron and steel has to be produced and manufactured in America. But for manufactured products, there is a general waiver until September 30 of this year. For project advertised before September 30 of 2025, the general waiver for manufactured product still applies. So these are the material category. There are 4 material categories. We have iron or steel products, manufactured products, and construction material. The fourth one is the other materials like cement and cementitious materials, aggregate and aggregate binding. These materials, the fourth one, the other material, these two regulations does not apply for this category. Only for iron, manufactured product, and construction materials. So the Buy America, the one, this is the old one, is almost 40 years old. It is Title 23 USC 313, plus this one is Build America, Buy America. So two things, Buy America and the Build America, Buy America. So this is the domestic material procurement preference means. So iron and the steel is based on the Buy America Act. It has to be manufactured, melted in the USA. And people are confusing like the Buy America and Build America versus the quality assurance. These are two separate things. The Buy America Act is we require the iron or steel, wholly or partly iron or steel material has to be melted, fabricated, and even in addition to also the coating process has to occur in America. That is the Buy America Act. The quality assurance requirement is a different animal. That is, we go to the fabrication, we check everything. So the material testing results means all the inspection, the testing is a different thing. So don't confuse with the Buy America requirement versus the quality assurance requirement. So for manufactured products, projects obligated on or before September 30, 2025, still the general waiver is applied. Means you don't have to worry about the Buy America Act. It is waived. If your project is advertised before this date. So for project advertised after October 1, 2025 to September 30 of next year, we will start applying. You have to show us the assembly part has to occur here. Manufactured products are a combination of 2 or more items, right? So the assembly has to occur in USA. So the certification has to show us this for a project advertised within this period. So starting next year, the manufactured product will be fully implemented. What does that mean? The final assembly plus the 55% has to requirement will be applied. So for construction materials, these are the construction materials. So based on the Title 2, Code of Federal Regulation 184.6, these are the construction material listed. The non-ferrous metal, plastic, fiber optic, optical fiber, lumber. So if you have all this material, the manufacturing process has to occur in United States. This is applied for state highway after November 10, for project advertised after November 10, 2022. If you use one of these material in your project, the certification has to show it's manufactured in USA. So the manufacturer and the producer shall provide the following statements of compliance. So in the certification, when we review, we look this. If you have a construction material, a statement like this has to be presented in your certification, in the manufacturer certification. All manufacturing process occurred in the USA, or material complies with Title 2, Code of Federal Regulation 184. So we are looking, our area engineers, material engineers, or technicians, when they review, if there is a construction material, they will look this type of statement. If no statement like this, it will be disputed. So for manufactured product, this is a statement we are looking. So like I mentioned before, for October 1, means it should satisfy the assembly requirement. I already explained this one. For iron and steel, it is the Buy American Act, so melted, manufactured in the USA. If the iron is still also coated, the coating process also has to occur in the United States. So these are some helpful Build America, Buy America links. By this, I finished my presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, good morning, everybody. Those here in the room and those online, appreciate you joining us today so that we can give you these updates. I'm the Director for State Highways Office of Construction, based out of Hanover. However, prior to being in that job, I was an Assistant District Engineer for Construction, working with a lot of our LPAs. I was out in Western Maryland, so I had Allegheny, Garrett, and Washington counties working out there. Also with our Appalachian Region Commission funds, extra LPA type that's out in that region. So a good bit of experience working there, and I know this is a big program to get the federal funds so we can get those projects done statewide. We've talked previous meeting about design. We've talked a lot about the environmental permits and everything else you need to get up to finally the point of construction. I've got a couple more activities to start with pre-bid before we get to that point. The first one is to talk about the person in responsible charge. Have we gone over that yet at all? No. Okay. Well, then let me introduce this concept. The person of responsible charge is a key player. Federal Highway requires that for the state highway on our projects, as well as the local public agencies on your projects. You have to have a person that is going to be in charge of that project that's receiving the federal funds. It has to be an employee of the agency. It cannot be a consultant working for that agency. So it has to be a permanent employee. For state highway, we've got to make sure it's one of our permanent employees, usually our area engineers on our construction jobs. For you all, again, it can't be a consultant. You got to have somebody that's going to be involved. May not be the inspector on that job every day, but they have to know what's going on the job on a regular basis and be able to represent the subrecipient in that activities. So the responsible charge, I'll just read what we've got from the manual as well too. The person must be a full-time employee of the subrecipient's agency who is accountable for the project per Federal Highway memo dated 4 August 2011. And that's still a current memo, but that's gives the definition and what is required of this person of responsible charge. So a key player there. We're looking for the subrecipients to give us kind of a chain of command for the project. We know you're Probably if you're county, you've got county commissioners or however that agency goes, but give us a chain of command that's going to go down through that to the responsible charge and then to your project engineer, your resident engineer, and your inspectors on that job. So we know who we're working with is something we're looking for there. Next thing I want to talk about is the inspection source. Who is going to inspect the work on your project? This might be a little bit different than some jobs you do just within your county or city or anything else. Because these jobs are federal funded, we need inspectors to be on the job at all times when the contractor's working. So it's not a show up once a day for 5 minutes, check in on the contractor, and then see you tomorrow. Now, it's when the contractor is there, you need to have an inspector there on the job as well too, or more, depending on the size of the job. But that is a requirement. So who are you going to get to provide, who are you going to use to provide that inspection for you? Well, there's three choices out there. First, you could use your own people, your own forces, and that would be fine because they work for you, providing they have the qualifications, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the second option is to use consultant inspection or a consultant firm to provide resident engineer, project engineer, and inspectors on that job. Caveat to that option number two, if you want to get reimbursed as part of this project for that inspection source, you have to make sure that the contract that you're using to get those inspectors was put out following the federal requirements as well too. So just to sort of keep that in the back of your mind, you might have went over that with design when you talked about using design contracts as well too. If you want to get reimbursed for a consultant contract that you've put out, it has to follow the federal process for that advertisement. Third option would be to ask State Highway to use our inspectors to inspect your project or to administer your project for you. Sometimes that's available, sometimes that's not. That's going to be a coordination factor with the SHA district that you're located in. Right now, we're a little bit slow in our work, number of jobs and things that we've got going on out there. We've probably got a number of good inspectors that have worked for us for years, but because our project total is a little bit lower than it has been in the past years, we've got some people that we could loan out to subrecipients to perform that inspection. And I would say that's probably in most areas across the state right now. An advantage to that is they're used to going through all this red tape that we're talking about over these meetings and dealing with all this to meet the federal requirements. So that's an option, but you would have to coordinate that with the district ahead of time and then also work that pricing into an agreement to reimburse State Highway for that use of those inspectors going forward. So those are kind of your three inspection sources that you could use. Just a caveat, I mentioned requesting funding for those things. You want to make sure when you put your funding request in, you're not only considering what does it cost to fund the design of this project and what does it cost to build this project. There's also other overhead costs that come into play here. We just talked about the three choices for inspection. Any of those three choices are going to come with a cost associated with it. So you want to plan for that. The materials clearance process and inspection process that Happy just talked about, that's going to come at a cost as well too. So you can't forget those things. And then even though your main design is finished, there's still going to be some design aspects during the construction phase as well too. That's what Dana was mentioning earlier with the structures reviews and things. Some of those come during the active construction phase with shop drawings, perhaps, or there's going to be RFIs, requests for information from the contractor that sometimes your inspection staff can't answer. Those might have to go back to the designer of record to help answer those questions. So you've got to keep in mind that may be an additional cost during construction. So you want to factor those things in also in addition to your actual construction costs and your actual design cost when you make that request through the federal aid office, through your program manager, and request those federal funds. So keep that in mind. Again, we're talking pre-bid activities, so we want to ensure our contract is ready to bid. We've talked a lot about these things. Obviously, your design is going to be complete. I think you talked about right-of-way and utilities previously, having those cleared so we're ready for construction to start. We want to make sure we've got all of our environmental permits, we've met the NEPA requirements. Want want to have those things done before we get to the construction phase. If we get into construction, we issue notice to proceed, and then we don't have an environmental permit that we needed ready to go, we're automatically in a delay situation right from the beginning, and that's going to cost us. So that's a problem. You got to think of those things. I paused on the DBE goal because I want to talk about that for a moment. I'm not sure how much you guys got into that, but right now we've got a little bit of a pause in our DBE, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Process. There's been a change that was issued recently. Did we talk about this at all yet? You did talk about that? Okay, I'm getting it. Okay, so I'll breeze through it. It was talked about already. Typically, you're going to have to make sure that you've requested that goal ahead of time before your project starts. So when we get our DBE list back up and running again, which will probably be a couple months from now, then that's always a step that you got to have before you advertise the contract to make sure that's in your bid documents. So we'll get back. It might just be a little bit different list, perhaps, not based automatically on race or sex as an automatic DBE approval, but it'll be based on those businesses showing that they do have a socially and economically disadvantaged situation to be able to be on that list. So it'll be a couple months and we'll have that program up and full speed again. So, but you've got to request that. And then wage rate determination, also important on our contracts. You all putting public contracts out are probably used to this, but you've got to look those wage rates up on the sam.gov site, and within our manual, we've got a link to that site. But just prior to advertising the job, you want to check and make sure that you've got the latest wage rates that are published, and it's by county as well too. So you can look up your jurisdiction, go to the state of Maryland, go to your county that your job's going to be in, and then find the wage rate that is applicable to you and make sure that we've got the latest one included in our jobs. It's one of those last minute things you check right before you're ready to advertise the contract to make sure it's the latest and the greatest, because they usually only update them once a year, but occasionally they do it more than that. And you never know when that's going to come out completely either. So you've got to be prepared for that. So all of these things are things that you want to check pre-bid. Next, getting into the procurement phase a little bit. You all as the sub-recipients are the procurement officers on these contracts. State Highway, of course, we're the procurement officers on our contracts, but when we're looking at these, we're expecting you to perform those procurement officer functions. If there would be a bid protest after the bids, that's not going to come to State Highway to answer. That will come to you all as the sub-recipients to go through that process. So just keep that in mind as we're thinking of the procurement requirements. We can be there to help answer some questions because we're used to the state and federal guidelines if there are questions that come up, but you all will serve as the procurement officers on these contracts. Public advertisement period. Obviously, like probably the other jobs you put out, this has to be put out and advertised publicly. We use EMA, the Electronic Maryland Marketplace Advantage website to put it out there. It has to be posted for at least 21 continuous days, and then you can bid open should you choose to do so on the 22nd day, if that fits your schedule. But just keep that in mind. It has to be a public advertisement so that it's out there for anybody and everybody to see that wants to see that. Also, a public bid opening. We've transitioned a little bit from the days of receiving hard copy bids that we open the envelopes in front of everybody, and now we're doing that electronically, but it's still a public bid opening, and those bid results are posted. We use Bid Express at State Highway, but there's other ways you can do that as well too. But it has to be a public bid opening that everybody can see. So we've gotten through, we've gotten our bids, we've opened the bids. You guys have looked at them, made sure everything's good with those bids, and you're going to submit that package, your concurrence and award package, back to State Highway. There's going to be a couple offices that review that. Obviously, your program manager you've been working with, the federal aid office is going to look at it, and then my office over at Office of Construction is going to look at it. Everything's good. We're going to issue the concurrence and award letter that will go out, and that's going to give you the thumbs up. You've completed all the requirements up to this point. You've met all these procurement and the pre-bid activities, and we are ready for you to be able to award and then start construction shortly thereafter. All right, we'll get into some other pre-construction activities then. We're still not quite building the job yet, but we're getting ready to. So pre-construction activities, we'd like to hold a pre-construction meeting with our contractors. And that really sets the tone for the job. It brings the key stakeholders in together to start out the job. A lot of the offices that have already made presentations today are going to be included in that meeting. They're going to be there to help talk about their part of the job. They're going to be there to answer questions with the contractor or for you all if they have any. So pre-con meeting is key. It really does bring everybody together and just start the job off successfully. We do have a template with the agenda items or possible agenda items to include in your pre-con within the manual that is out there published. And so I suggest you use that as a template, a starting point. If you need to put some sort of specific items in that go along with your job or your agency, then that by all means add those in. But this just gives you a template of the main things you want to hit during that pre-con meeting to make sure we're all on the same page going forward. Schedule. You're going to get the contractor to submit a schedule in for their work. And of course, we know when we're issuing the notice to proceed, and within our contract, we've said when the contract's supposed to end. But what happens in between there? That's really not for us to decide. That's in the hands of the contractor to tell us how they're going to build the job for us. And so within your contract documents, you would have told them what type of schedule that you need them to submit. There's a couple different types of schedules. If it's a very simple job, we just do we call it a bar chart or an activities chart. And that's how the contractor it can be as simple as an Excel almost, or just a Microsoft project sort of that they can use to do that for us. And that works for simple jobs. For more complicated jobs, we get into critical path method or CPM schedules. And those are definitely a lot more detailed, step by step, what the contractor is going to do. And the contractor should be submitting that to you before you start work. You should review it and be able to approve it before we get moving on the job. How does that benefit you in the long run? One, it gives you an idea what's going to happen through that whole time period. But if we ever get into delay situations or contract claim situations, a lot of those involve contract time. If we run into an unforeseen site condition and you start excavating and you find something that we weren't anticipating to be underground, and that's going to get us in trouble, it's always going to come back and impact the schedule in one way or another as well too. So you have to, if we've got the contractor schedule, then and we're asking them for monthly updates, which is per the specification, we'll see how that impacted things, and we can accurately account for that within a change order if we need to, within a claim situation. We can defend ourselves based on that schedule as well too. So very important to get that initial schedule, review it thoroughly, make sure they met the contract requirements, and move forward from that. Field office. You want to make sure that your field office is set up if that's a requirement within your contract. Maybe some contracts you're using the county office, another office, so you don't have to pay for the extra expense of a field office. That's fine too. A lot of times you might put a job trailer out close to the work so it's easily accessible. It's really how you set the contract up, but it's something you need to think about. But we need that field office to be set up and running before we allow the contractor to start work. That way we're ready to inspect and do what we have to do on the job as well too. And partnering, very important as well too. The pre-con is going to be your kickoff and get you rolling, but State Highway really stresses partnering on our contracts. And it's been about 30 years ago since State Highway really started emphasizing this. We noticed we were having a lot of issues, a lot of problems, a lot of infighting with our contractors between us and them. So we started this partnering concept. How can we work together to resolve issues at the lowest level and keep the job moving forward successfully, ultimately to turn it over to the public? And partnering is the way we do that. So I'll put a plug in for our MDQI, Maryland Quality Initiatives. We have a conference each year, and there's things that go on year round. The county is involved. The counties are involved in that as well too. But on that webpage, on the MDQI webpage, there's a partnering link, and it'll give you tips. There's a partnering manual there. There's tips for partnering meeting agendas. We have the pre-con, but then we suggest monthly partnering and progress meetings as you go out the life of the job as well too, just so everybody can keep up to speed with what's going on. If you're running into any issues, you're resolving them. It gives a sample issue resolution ladder as well too, to work through those issues. So partnering definitely a key factor to successfully complete a job. Now we can finally start building the job, getting into construction. So this is what I was excited about. We start building the job, contractors out there working, and they've got the crews out there. They've got some subcontractors out there doing things. One of the requirements that they're supposed to do when they're working is to provide or create and then provide us with certified payrolls on the job. We're tracking what the workforce was out there on our inspectors' daily reports, but then they're going to turn in certified payrolls to you all, and that's for the prime and any subs out there. Not for suppliers, but for any prime and subs that are out there. And then we need to be looking at those, checking those against our IDRs, checking those against the wage rates determination that's in the contract to make sure everybody's paid correctly. So that is a federal compliance requirement item. So keep that in mind. Wage rates are important. Being the construction guy, I've got to stress work zone safety as well too. Anytime that we're building a job that is beside live traffic, it's going to be a dangerous situation. Construction in general is dangerous, but anytime we've got live traffic going right beside us, which is the case in many of our jobs, unless you're fortunate enough to be able to have a full closure while we're doing that construction zone, it's going to be dangerous. So we need to have a focus area from the construction and inspection force, making sure that we are focusing on work zone safety out there. Material clearance, Hafty covered a lot of that. I just want to add 2 points to that. Your inspection staff, as he talked about the source of supply and making sure they come in stamped and approved. Before that material, any material gets used on our construction site, we need to make sure that it is approved. He said it, but I'll foot stomp it as well too, because that then falls on the construction inspection staff to be making sure that that actually happens. So that'll be you. So make sure it's approved prior to use as the foot stomp. Then the other thing is, if the contractor has brought some material in and used it, and we realize that we didn't have the approval yet on that material and it somehow got put up, I would withhold payment on that item until you get the source of supply, you get everything you need from the contractor on those items. And that's acceptable. That's in our specifications. So acceptable and expected to withhold payment on items where you don't have the material clearance for. Because if you pay them for it, what's the chances you're going to get it after that? They've got their money. And then we'll get to the end of the job and you'll have disputed item list trying to work out with Office of Materials. And we've got maybe a little bit of retainage or something else left in the job, but they've already received the vast majority of their money. So the way to do that is withhold that in their monthly estimate or in their estimate, withhold the payment of those pay items until you get the material clearance for those. So do good helping you there, Happy? Okay, good. Tag teaming on that one. So, all right. Next one is inspection. We've talked about the 3 places that you can get your inspectors from, but what are some requirements for those inspectors? And I've been told by some of our folks in the districts that this has been a point that has raised some questions. So in the updated manual, we're going to be more specific with what's required of those inspectors. And I'm going to read just verbatim of what we're changing the language in the manual to say there. Inspectors must have the necessary heavy civil construction experience, training, certifications specific to the material and the work that is being inspected, and knowledge commensurate to the complexity of the contract to ensure that project construction and administration follows all requirements as described in the contract documents, this manual, and standard construction practices. So we can't just have Joe Bag of Donuts come out and inspect our job. Hey, I worked construction for a year. I did residential construction and I handed shingles up the ladder so they could do roof work, but I'm ready to inspect your bridge contract now. No, that's not going to work. We need to have folks who have the experience and the certifications and the training for the type of work, the type of contract, the type of project that they are inspecting. Hafty mentioned some of the certifications. I'm going to go down the list as well too. Again, I don't expect them to have 100% of these certifications, but if that type of material, if that type of work is in the job that they're inspecting, they need to have the certifications to inspect that work on that contract then. So some of these things we talked about, MARCEP, the Mid-Atlantic Region Technician Certification Program. They have concrete, asphalt, soils and aggregates, and pavement marking certifications through MARCEP. So if you've got those items on your job, they're going to need to have the certification for that. Any excavation that we're going to have on any of our contracts, there are sediment and erosion control requirements. In general, you're going to need to have the MDE's Responsible Personnel Certification, the RPC. It used to be called the Green Card because it was a green card that they handed out. We're real unique like that with our naming. So that is a requirement. If you're going to be in SHA's right-of-way with any part of your project, we also require the SHA Erosion and Sediment Control Yellow Card. It was a yellow card that we used to hand out. See the theme there? So if you've got those two sort of on the sediment and erosion control to think of. There is a Maryland Temporary Traffic Control Manager certification, and that's to set up your maintenance of traffic, your cones, your signs, your drums, everything that's required there. We want to make sure that that's done correctly per the standards, so we want somebody that's certified to know that. And then a newer one that just came out last year is the Maryland Traffic Barrier Certification. Just a very brief, it's new, but it's important. There was a lot of lawsuits nationwide on traffic barrier end treatments, and they were suing companies that were installing end treatments incorrectly. They were suing the governments that allowed those to be installed. So you want to make sure your traffic barrier is installed correctly. And having certified inspectors and installers are important for that. And then lastly, one other one we like to see is the OSHA 10-hour construction safety course as well too. There's more than that. There's 40-hour course. There's even higher than that you can get with OSHA, but at least the 10-hour safety covers the basis. So those are some of the core construction inspector trainings that we would expect to see if you've got that type of work on your contract for those inspector source. Again, one advantage of using state highway inspectors is they're going to come with those certifications already because they're using them on our jobs if that's available for you. So, all right, got record keeping up there. I think Linda's going to touch on that more in her slide. We were both referencing the same thing in the manual, so I'll let her hit that. But I'll just stress that good record keeping is an everyday practice. You can't wait until you get to Linda's phase of the project, which is contract closeout, to have good records. You've got to do that every day throughout the life of the project and keep it organized and good to go. Change orders. In the manual, we go through the multiple step process to get change orders approved. Change orders, even if they're going to be 100% funded by the subrecipient, still have to go through state highway for acknowledgement. So just keep that in mind. We still need to process those. It's part of the federally funded contract, so we need to see it even if it's 100% local funds going to those change order items. But again, work with your district on the change orders. They can get you access to the forms and keep that process moving, tracking it for you there. I hit, when we were talking about partnering, I emphasized the partnering and progress meetings, but I'll foot stomp that again, just how important that is throughout the life of a job. If you can find out issues that you're having on a monthly basis and make sure you're resolving those rather than waiting months and months and then it's too far behind and you got a huge delay on the job, just the importance of those meetings to partner and check on the progress. And I would expect some other folks that were involved in the pre-con and some of your leadership might come to those meetings, or if you offer a Teams or a Google Meet or some sort of virtual option, that's a good way just to keep everybody in the loop of what's going on in the project. So, audits, another item that's going to come up. There are, with our federal jobs, and we face this all the time, there's all kinds of audits that could happen. You could have a federal highway specific audit on that job. You could have in general, they're trying to check things. State highway and our checks, because we've got oversight responsibilities, might come in and look at things from various of our offices. I would say if we get notified that a specific job is going to have a federal audit, we would get out there with you and I think help prepare you, make sure the records are ready to go and everything else on those jobs. The district construction office could help you with that because they do it on a more regular basis just to prepare for that. But again, having your records in order and the good record keeping of all these processes we've talked about is going to set you up for success on any audit that we go through. Final inspections, punch lists, stopping time charges. We're getting to the end of our construction job now. It's substantially complete. There's only minor items of work left. We can probably stop time charges on the job, but you want to have a formal walkthrough and invite a variety of players to come walk through that job with you. State Highway would attend if we're able to do so, and just to make sure you've got a solid punch list to give to that contractor before we're ready to close the contract out. And I think Linda will talk about that a little bit more as well too once we've closed it up and handed the books over to her. So. All right, I am just going to very quickly breeze through this because I think Susie's going to tag off of this as well too. Contractor payment and reimbursement. First three are just kind of steps in order that has to happen. Either we're going to create a pay estimate or the contractor is going to invoice us and you're going to pay the contractor and then you're going to ask for reimbursement. Kind of three simple steps. Susie will go into it in a little bit more detail, but it has to follow that process. This is a reimbursement process for these funds. So you've got to pay the contractor and then get reimbursed for it. Retainage, State Highway typically holds 5% retainage on our construction jobs. I would encourage you, especially on larger jobs, to hold retainage. It's just another safety valve to make sure the job's going to get finished and keep the contractor moving on the job as well too. So with a good contractor, when they get beyond 50% complete of the job, we do allow a retainage reduction on our contracts. For contractors that we work with and they're doing a positive job for us, we'll reduce that down to 2.5% or 1% after 50% complete. We figure out they're on a good footing, they're going to work to completion for us, so that's an option as well too. But definitely recommend holding retainage. That helps us out. And then final reimbursement, I will save that for Linda and Susie. One other thing, not on a slide, that I want to put a plug in for is our electronic Maryland Construction Management System, EMCMS. This is the system that we use to document what work's going on in the field. All of our inspectors have an iPad. They do their IDRs, their inspectors' daily reports on this iPad through our EMCMS system. If you've got multiple inspectors on the job, the system automatically combines those IDRs into a daily log of all the items that were worked on that day and the quantities that were completed. And then at the end of the month or the end of the pay period, it combines all of those days and builds the monthly estimate for you. And you could have that printed out and compare it against the contractor's invoice side by side if you wanted to, or we just use our invoice or our estimate that EMCMS creates to create and pay that monthly estimate and get the contractor to sign off on it from that point. So that is available for you to use on these LPA projects, and it's available for free. This is, I think in the past, we've used MCMS, which was an earlier version of this that RK&K had developed, that when the locals wanted to use it, you had to pay for or come up with some sort of agreement with RK&K to be able to use that. This EMCMS is our system. We've bought it, we've paid for it, and so it is free for you all to use. Our folks can come out and train anybody on that would want to use it. There's advantages to us because it talks to the MMS system. It brings the bid items once they're in, and brings them in easier, and we can just close the job out. Federal Highway and our folks are used to looking at it to do audits. So strong plug for that. Opens the door also for the possibility of e-ticketing, which is getting any concrete and asphalt tickets from the source of supplies electronically through our vendor. That ties into EMCMS as well too. So just a lot of advantages there. I don't think we're at a point at State Highway where we're going to say that you have to use this. We're still leaving the door open for you to use your own system if you've got it. But this is a very clean and organized way to manage the work on the construction job from a documentation standpoint. It's free and we're willing to come out and train. So there's really no disadvantage to maybe even looking into it, maybe even trying in parallel with another system that you're using and just seeing if it would be advantageous for you to use. So just something else to consider, but I wanted to throw that plug out there. I've got some of my folks really pushing me, Stephen, make it mandatory, but we're not there yet, but we do. It's a great system for the purpose that it serves. So you said we're waiting until questions to the end, right, Susie? So got it.
So as Stephen had said, this is a federally aided transportation program, which means that the funding will be reimbursed to the project sponsor upon receipt of the invoice. It's the responsibility of the project sponsor to pay the invoice up front after all the necessary steps have been taken to clear the items, like Hopti had spoke about, to make sure the work has been completed. The district can go out and do district oversight to make sure what's on the invoice has been completed. And we make sure that, that we have all the clearances. The subrecipient may submit a reimbursement for up to 80% of the total project cost, and they will be covering the 20% match. When the subrecipient requests this reimbursement, they need to put together a reimbursement package that includes a cover letter. Here we are. Includes the MDOT reimbursement cover letter. We ask for a cost breakdown. We ask for the invoice, the 20% match documentation, and proof of payment. We need something to show that the actual payment has been paid to the contractor, whether it's an R-Stars, electronic transfer, or a canceled check. We need something to verify that the payment has been made to the contractor. Subrecipient is responsible for the 20% match. We need clear documentation the match has been kept by the subrecipient. On our end, we also keep a spreadsheet that represents the 20% match that is listed in the reimbursement, but it's nice to have something to reconcile with the project sponsor to make sure you're both on the same page. Activities funded by the subrecipient must be directly related to the proposed project to be used for match. They must be eligible to be used for match. So if it's something that happened across the road on a project, but it's near your location, that's not something we can consider for match. When it comes to the rec trail projects, some rec trail projects come in for construction. They use the design match that is completed by the project sponsor. They use the design the design costs as match for rec trail projects. Project costs that exceed the award amount and match are the responsibility of the subrecipients. When you get to construction, if your construction cost estimate increases, that does not automatically increase your award. Your award is your award. If your costs increase, you can always come back with a formal letter to MDOT asking to increase the award amount that you've been provided. If there's funding available and we talk with the MPO, it's very likely that you can get an increase, but we have to go through the formal process of receiving a letter and talking with management as well as the MPO to make sure there's sufficient funding to manage this increase. It also says that any request greater than 10% goes to the Transportation Selection Committee, Transportation Alternative Selection Committee for review and approval. That also goes to the MPO for approval also. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Linda to talk about contract finals.
Hello, my name is Linda Kennedy. I am the District 5 Sketchbook Reviewer. When your projects come in to me, we look for the records to be clear and concise and everything in complete order. As Stephen stated, the EMCMS is available to you. I strongly advise you to get into that program. It'll help keep all your files organized in a single location. It makes it a lot easier for us when we're trying to audit it. It makes it easier to compile your final quantities so we can make sure that all your inspector reports and your daily logs and your ledgers all match, which is what we look for that to happen. Everything needs to match up with the records for your final quantities for you guys to be reimbursed. We want everything to run in consecutive order. as far as your IDRs go. You need those to hit consecutive days so we have a clear program of the contract. Your final audit, when we get to that, everything should be completed. We should have the material clearance, any ADA that was on the contract. Any of that stuff should all be finalized by the time it gets to me. So then when I go through and I'm checking everything, I need all the dates of if you had surfacing, I need the dates for the surfacing. If you had the ADA, I need the ADA approvals and the certifications. Anything that was on the contract, I need the certifications and the dates for it in order to finalize your contract. So many times when we start doing this, we have dates missing and no one seems to be able to give us what dates we need. You have to make sure that all that is compiled. We have to have them in order to close out your contract. If there's no discrepancies in the quantities and all of our dates match up and all the quantities match up, that's how we can approve your contract right away and send it on. Anything that we have to wait for holds that up. So if you're trying to get it through kind of quick, then you need to match everything up before it gets to us. Then we can go on through and do your final audit and line everything up. When you hand your stuff in, we typically will give you a checklist and a sketchbook title sheet. You can compile everything on those. The checklist will tell you exactly what you need to have. Anything that applies to your contract would be checked off and dated. If it doesn't apply to your contract, you just tell us it's not applicable. I'm sorry?
You're good, Linda. I think it was just some feedback.
Okay. So anything that would apply with your contract, you check off. If it doesn't apply to your contract, you just ignore it and put not applicable. And we know that it wasn't in your contract. Your title sheet will compile all your dates, your number of days on the job. If you had a lot of bad weather days, you can record all that on there. And that will give us a clear picture of how the construction went. And as long as you have all that in order, we can run right through and close your contract. And that's what we're looking for, for it to kind of go to where we don't have to keep backtracking and trying to figure out what dates went where. And that's why I do recommend the EMCMS program, because we can have everything right there in one spot and we can see it all and have it all organized.
There's some changes forthcoming that were mentioned throughout the presentation. One thing that we are going to improve is we're going to have a better LPA website, which will be a one-stop shop to have all the manuals located on it. As Stephen had mentioned in his presentation, we are updating the LPA manual. We're in the process of doing that right now. It's a long process with 13 chapters going through many divisions and departments at SHA, reviewing them, and then going to Federal Highway for their feedback and approval. Currently, we have 8 chapters that have been sent to Federal Highway, and the rest of them will be going within the next couple of weeks. The next thing we have is updates as far as the one-stop application. The one-stop application is where recipients can apply for federal funding for transportation alternatives, rec trails, and the other programs that we've mentioned here today. We are currently making improvements to the application and approving additional guidance. So once that's ready to go, you will hear about it at the Roadshow. We're getting ready to start planning for the FY27 Grants Roadshow, which happens prior to the application opening. Last but not least, we are identifying opportunities to improve and streamline the review and approval process. We currently know that we have some challenges with our review process when we get in design submissions prior to construction. So we're trying to streamline that process and come up with a better flow of how we are doing things. Once we have that all organized, we will share that with everyone. So those are some changes forthcoming with the department.
So, as Susie said, I'm Keith Kacharik from the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, which is the MPO for the Baltimore region. There's 6 different MPOs in the state. So it's the TPB for Prince George's and Montgomery. There's WMAPCO for Cecil, Salisbury, Wacomico, Calvert, St. Mary's, and Hagerstown. The Baltimore region covers Anne Arundel, Baltimore County, Carroll County, Harford, Howard, Queen Anne's counties, Baltimore City, and the city of Annapolis. And what we do, or what I do as far as these types of projects is concerned, is we work with the Transportation Improvement Program. What is that? That's the short-term plan that lists transportation projects that receive federal funds or are regionally significant. Different types of projects that are included in the TIP are highway projects, transit projects, bike ped projects, port projects, and we even have some ferry projects. Each jurisdiction has their own prioritization of how they include projects in the TIP, and as well as the modal agencies, SHA, MTA, MDTA, they have their own process. Within the TIP, MDOT has several area-wide projects, and a lot of the things that were discussed today would fall under the area-wide projects, such as the Transportation Improvement Program, the rec trails, things like that, that would fall within the SHA area-wide projects. But there's a bunch of other projects that receive grant funding as well. A lot of bridge projects, geometric improvement projects, roadway widenings, things like that, that the counties and the jurisdictions, the cities, they receive funding, grant funding for. The problem that we have is that when the jurisdictions receive notification that they've been awarded grant funding, they don't actually get that funding right away because Federal Highway or Federal Transit is telling them that those projects need to be in the TIP before they can receive their funding. Well, the problem with that is we can't put a project into the TIP unless it's actually funded. So there's an area here that is a bit of an issue that the way we handle it now is the jurisdiction will come to us and say, we received this grant funding. Federal Highway is saying it has to be in the TIP, but we can't put it in the TIP without funding. So the MPOs, and I'm not sure how the other MPOs do it, but this is how we do it at BMC. We will respond by providing a letter to the jurisdiction saying that we understand that you've received this grant funding. We understand that it needs to be in the TIP, and we will be happy to put it in the TIP once you physically have the funding in hand. And that generally satisfies the Federal Highway Administration or the Federal Transit Administration. So if you come across this situation, this is really all I wanted to say, was if you come across this situation where you've received a letter that you've been awarded grant funding for a project, but a Federal Highway is saying you need to have it in the TIP first, just contact your MPOs, preferably the TIP coordinator, for the next 20 days or so. That'll be me at BMC. And then I have a replacement coming in, but I'll still be working on it with her. So just contact your TIP coordinators at your MPOs and let them know what the situation is. And hopefully they do a similar process in all the other MPOs and just write a letter of acknowledgement of the project and letting them know that you'll put it in the TIP once the funding is physically in hand. So I think that's all I have for that.